Hi everyone, Jean here. I'm going to show you my whole process from start to finish of how I make a shadow box or a light box. For this specific box, I decided to do a little fan art of Drawfee, a YouTube channel that I really like, and specifically their episode about movie monsters and Nathan's take on Jaws. Like, he decided to do a space Jaws, and I thought that would look really cool as a shadow box if I could mix regular paper and tracing paper so that you could get the see-through effect of the shark's body that you would see in the original drawing. Thought it'd be cool to see the stars through the tracing paper. At this stage, once I'm done tracing, I like to go over each layer and make sure that everything was traced well and that all the lines are neat so that it makes it easier to cut later on. And I also need to make sure that every bit of paper that I'm going to cut connects to something else, because unfortunately I can't make anything float. So I need to make sure that the rocks you saw before are connected to other rocks, or like the bits of the teeth and the tongue and stuff like that are connected to the rest of the shark, otherwise they'd just fall off when I cut them. For this astronaut, it was actually fairly easy because the drawing was already just kept the essential lines, so it made it easier for me to decide what lines to include, what to just leave as a silhouette, and which ones to make thicker and more noticeable. Like I said, for this one I also needed to shift some rocks around and to shift the astronaut a bit compared to the original drawing, because I could have, I guess, done individual rocks and then stuck them all together, but that can get messy really quickly and you can have like an overlapping effect in the shadows that I don't really like. Plus, I kind of like how the rocks look like this because they look a bit flowy. They look a bit less sharp, which could kind of throws back to that idea that we might be underwater, and that underwater is kind of like being up in space. So it like ties in nicely with the Jaws theme. These are the layers that would go behind the shark that I'll later cut stars into them. You'll see it later on. So that empty one as well is made for stars that I'll do with a needle. And now we move on to the big showpiece of this box, which was a lot of fun to do. I was a bit worried that I'd forget which bits are meant to be filled in and which bits are empty, but it actually wasn't as confusing as I was anticipating. But I will make a mistake that you're about to see later on, where I connected the tongue and the bottom teeth to just one tiny strip of paper that connects to the jaw, and I made it too tiny and didn't realize I cut through it. So you'll see when I remove the entire paper, the whole mouth comes with it, and I'm very sad. Luckily though, this is just the paper layer of the shark. I'll trace after that the silhouette of the whole shark in its entirety on tracing paper, and the aim was to not only use it for the body, but also make sure that the paper bit that you see here doesn't just fly around all over the box. Yeah, there you go. Goodbye the mouth. Oh. But yeah, the other advantage to using that tracing paper silhouette is that it makes sure that the paper in the previous layer doesn't just dangle around, because it is held just by the top of the mouth there. What I realized later on and realized was a little silly is I didn't need to do this twice. I could have just stuck my tracing paper to the back of the actual paper and cut everything in one go, and it would have saved me a lot of time, and it would have saved me a lot of adjustments that I had to make later on. Didn't think about that as I was doing it. Oops. And now comes the really tricky part of this box, which was to make sure that everything lines up and paste all the tiny, tiny, tiny bits of paper that I'll be adding. You'll see my head a lot here because I needed to lean over the paper quite a bit to make sure that everything was lining up properly. So the mouth, the tongue and the teeth was fine, but it's when you had to add all of those really small strips of paper that go over the fin. And I decided that I also wanted to add little bits of paper to every individual tooth to make sure that the teeth stood out and had like a bit of a menacing, darker edge to them. And that was a little tedious because it's not something you can just do with your fingers because they're too tiny and the paper will just stick to your finger. So you have to use a pair of pliers, and even then sometimes the paper will stick to the pliers and it can become a bit of a mess the smaller it is. That's why I tried to attach as much of the teeth together as I could, because I know that I knew that cutting every individual tooth would not have been practical. Would have ended up messy, and like there would have been bits of glue all over the tracing paper, which does stand out quite a bit if you know where to look. But I don't regret doing it because I do think those teeth did need a bit of highlight to them. So tedious but worth it. Another thing that I would have been saved if I had cut everything together is that I needed to adjust the tracing paper silhouette, because even if you follow the same template, there's no way that you're going to make exactly the same silhouette twice, so I needed to cut a bit into it and readjust it and everything. Now I'm making the stars for the background. I used a needle for this and a bit of foam that I stuck behind so that I could get some thicker holes for larger stars and then do some smaller ones without the foam. What I realized afterwards, after I did some testing with the lights, is that I could have afforded to do more stars and like thicker ones and be a bit more brave with it, but it's a little hard to tell when you're just doing it just looking at the paper, because it can feel a little too busy at times. You don't realize how much of it is going to be seen once the lights are on. And this is the bit where you cut out a bunch of foam strips and paste it between each layer to make sure that all layers are separated, and that's what gives it the the three-dimensional effect, I guess you'd call it. One bit you will not see, because I realized this in tests that I did not film, is that the shark layer was not defined enough to be on its own separate layer, separated by foam, because if it was too far away, you would have like you see here, it's actually pasted to the paper, and that's the only way you can see the stars through it. If it had been on its separate layer, separated by foam, you couldn't actually see the stars through, which was the entire point of the tracing paper. But there you have it. There's the final result, and I really like how this one came out. I like how the only darker bits of the box are the shark and the astronaut and the bits of stone there. So I did reach the effect I was looking for. I was happy. And there you have it. Thank you for watching, and I've got some more videos coming, so look forward to those.